an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece. Episodes 555 through 557. Deadly attacks one after another. Zoro and Sanji join the battle. Unveiled the secret weapons of the Sunny. And Iron Pirate, here comes General Frankie. In these episodes, our friends are all getting to stretch their legs a little bit and let loose, and we are getting to see some of the things that they learned in their time away. I like this better than the last trio of episodes just because I can't resist showing off power-ups. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Michael for commissioning this episode. Michael, if you're out there, thank you very much. Michael has found a way to sponsor episodes despite not having PayPal, and it's taken a little bit of extra work, but I appreciate that he is really just like, I am going to make this happen. So these episodes are, like I said, just kind of a showcase for our friends to come out and just swing their dicks a little bit. I don't have anything against that in a general way, but you guys know that I just feel their abilities deserve a way cooler, better baddie. And there is something really unsatisfying about the way that this battle is set up. So I've already kind of lamented the fact that we are just going to have... We're just going to have Horty like standing in the middle of a courtyard yelling about all of his evil plans to everybody, which is just incredibly generic already. But in these three, because of that, these three episodes, it's basically like a bunch of the henchmen, like, and it varies from sort of top level henchmen. I want to call them according to, like, their heights, because we've got our regular, ordinary 6-footer dudes, who are just people. And those make up most of this, like, 100,000 that they're working with. And then we've got Horty, who I would say is about 40 feet tall. And I would say that his sort of, like, immediate henchmen are probably about 25 feet. I feel like they were around the same size as Horty, but then he took the drug. So I feel like I can say that they're about 25 feet. And then we have like even sort of the lower level henchmen who I would put at about 15. So what we get here is a lot of our friends just like throwing themselves at this wall of bad guys, and the bad guys all seeing how incredibly OP most of our friends have grown. And then Horty, who is up on like a platform just observing all of this. Horty never actually changes his plan at all or attempts to like come at this from a new way. He just keeps throwing his guys at the problem as if he hasn't noticed what the Straw Hats are capable of, and he doesn't, like, realize that they're going to be absolutely crushed. It's weird. Like, the one thing that he pulls out eventually is the Kraken. And the Kraken, it turns out, is, like, the same one that Luffy made friends with, so the Kraken isn't even really, like, that helpful. I'm sorry, guys, if you're watching this, my eyes are, like, burning all of a sudden. I do not know why. But yeah, so it's just, I just don't understand setting up the bad guy to be like overseeing everything so that all of his friends and his henchmen see everything. And that way there's no real sense of like building the conflict or there's not even something simple like a change of scenery so that we've got a different landscape to be working with? Like, could we have, inside a building, have some weird, like, rooms, walls, other creatures that are around? Could we have anything to sort of mix it up? All we've got is this just, like, bowl-shaped sort of courtyard. And it's really similar to the War of the Best, where it's just this round, almost enclosed space with the outer walls being able to, like, look down quite clearly. At least with that area, though, there was, like, the harbor. So you had a sort of change in the elements. We do have water here, but it's not really, like... The way it's being used isn't really interesting at this point, because everybody here, it seems, pretty much walks. I don't feel like there's anybody in the mix who needs to swim. So it's just really almost like a pageant. It made me feel a little bit like our friends are just each getting their chance to come out and pose and have their moment as if we're watching, like, Miss America, and they get to show off their skill, and then we applaud, and then they shuffle off to the side, and then our next friend comes out and they show off what they can do now, and we ooh and ah, and then we sort of, like, score them, and we wait to see how everything shakes out. You guys, I can't emphasize enough, these level ups are so cool, and they deserve so much better than the battle they're getting. I really don't understand why Oda chose this villain and set it up this way after everything they have been through to be the first group they go up against. And it's it could be such a dope setting. We're at the fucking, like, underwater island inside a giant bubble. That's so cool. And what are we doing with it? It's such a shame. I would love to have seen something done, like, this is actually one of the few times, and I have said before how the thing with the group getting split up and they all each have to fight, like, their own individual groups of baddies and then eventually find their way back to each other. And that definitely is a little bit played. I think that the reason we've been kept together isn't even because that's played and we want to do something different, so much as the Straw Hats have not gotten to see what one another are able to accomplish now. And so we need them to not only be showcased for the enemy, but for one another. It just, I just feel that was something more of a gimmick, I guess, is really what I'm looking for in the way that we are approaching this problem. Like, I'm thinking about when our friends attacked, like, when they were trying to rescue Robin. And we had, this, like, multi-staged area where there was the entrance and the sort of outer gates, and then you have to, like, get through this long walkway, and then there are the inner gates, and then there's, like, the stairs that you have to go all the way up, and a bridge you have to cross, and it's like, there are all of these different stages that really mark how much progress you're making. And they each present their own issues because of whatever the architecture is. So even though you're kind of seeing a lot of similar fights over and over, it gives you this sense of progression, and it gives you a little, like, enough of a change to keep things interesting. And here it's just like a flat, open stone floor, and everybody just coming at them as hard as they can. And it is really numbing after a while, because you have seen so much of the same kinds of, not even the same kinds of attacks exactly, because obviously everybody can do a different thing, but it is so sort of redundant that, okay, yeah, you can kick a lot of people's ass, like, you know, over and over again. So I'm sorry to front load with complaints here, but you guys know that I'm just going to tell you the truth about things, that how I feel about them. And I got a comment, I think it was from Andrew on the Patreon, and he said that, like, this is widely considered one of the worst arcs. Not the worst, I don't think, but, like, not, you know, up to the level of a lot of the others, which, again, it's just such a shame that the arc immediately after all of them, like, progressing forward and taking on new skill sets and stuff isn't an amazing... This should be fantastic. This should be where we all get, like, hype and pumped up because we're getting to see this stuff and they're, like, just incredible, you know? But instead, it's this very weird sort of... it feels like a villain that they could have handled before their level ups. It really does. Like, I don't think they really could, because Luffy takes out half of them with his haki, which he didn't know how to use. But there were also times where, like, he was able to use his haki and it wasn't under his control, but it still happened. So there's parts of, like, my brain that kind of feel, y'all would have been okay even then. And even if I'm not correct on that, I shouldn't feel that way at all. That shouldn't be creeping in any way. So we pick up this episode right after Luffy has, like, you know, basically leveled the place out. I love one of them just saying, like, he didn't do anything and he just knocked them all out. And Horty is just standing there staring with his mouth open. But like I said, he does not change his approach here at all. That moment with, like, Luffy saying, I'm King of the Pirates, that's my job, that's at the end of the last episode. So, of course, we, like, see that at the beginning of this one again. And I had really thought that because Horty looked so impressed with what Luffy was able to do here, that it was going to mean that he came up with some new strategy. And it's pretty much seen, it seems, by everybody. That, like, yeah, what he did was really dope, but we also still have 50,000 guys. Which, I mean, that would sound a lot more convincing to me if you hadn't just lost 50,000 guys with what seems to be no effort on the part of your opponent. There is no reason to think that he can't handle taking out another 50,000 without even breaking a sweat. And I think that's also kind of a problem of haki, and I don't know if it's like... I feel like I remember there being a mention that you can't use it, like, back to back, that once you use it, you need time to, like, basically recharge. I don't know if I'm imagining that, but it does sort of feel like Luffy doesn't even need his crew anymore. You know, like, he was able to take so many people out here and it was so effortless that maybe they are just a little bit whipped cream and they don't feel as crucial as they otherwise would. Florian says, I think it is fair that they are pushing all the bad guys around like nothing. Shows us how strong they got, but the villains still could be interesting in other ways. And, like, yeah, I think that if we saw them, like, I think my difficulty is because I understand what you mean about, like, we're seeing how strong they got, but Horty just feels like a villain that we've seen a million times before. So pushing this guy around doesn't feel like I'm getting how strong they got in a way that's impressive. It feels like, well, this is the kind of dude y'all were dealing with in episode 100. So I really hope that now that we're in the mid 500s, you can deal with somebody like this. Like, this feels like You better. You should be able to. And I'm saying that without even your 2 years of studying and whatnot. But, maybe that's just me. Maybe I have an unrealistic expectation. So this is when, what's his name? Is it like Izu? The guy with the chameleon sort of power. He tries and gets all of these guys, Zio, that's his name. He tries to instill some hope in the troops by pointing out how many men they still have left. And it does seem to work. It's funny though, because like I said, since it didn't take any effort, it doesn't seem like that big. It doesn't seem like this would revive my hope. And he is yelling about how they have shattered our hopes at every turn. They must pay. And I kind of was like, have they shattered your hopes at every turn? I don't even really remember that. Are you talking about humans in general? And then he says, Jinbei is like a complete traitor because he went to defend the humans and is siding with them. And he's just betrayed his own kind and sided with the, legacy of the queen. So look at him as just as much of an enemy as the rest of them, which honestly seems kind of unnecessary to even say, because it's not like these pirates are holding back from harming fishmen either. We've already seen that they're totally willing to put them on the chopping block. So being he's just as bad as the humans. Yeah, y'all have made it very clear where you stand on caring about fishmen in general. So that's fine. So I love the fact that when Zoro starts to get ready for battle, he chastises Luffy for knocking too many men out because he's like, you barely left any for me. And then Sanji says, I am going to take on 30,000. You got it? Mosshead. He calls him back a dirty cook. And I love that as they're having this little discussion, some random dude just tries to sneak up on Sanji in the midst of this. And Sanji just dismissively literally raises a foot and stomps him into the ground. But it was very funny to me that this guy is sort of attempting to sneak up behind him. And I was just like, sir, good effort, I guess. But also I really felt like you should have thought this through a little bit more. So this is when Brooks says, I've got just the jam to start this battle off right. And you guys, I don't feel like I realized that Brook is the bard of the group. Of course he is, but the way that works is so much more fun now than it was. I am just, you guys, I just really love Brook, and I keep sort of being mad at myself for falling into it. Even though I'm so irritated with him and his will you show me your panties thing, I want to leave him behind and pull away from him completely. And he just keeps managing to draw me back in. And it's remarkable. It's against my will, but I can't help it. And he's so much fun. The way that he is able to create this festival atmosphere later was fantastic. And you guys, I'm sorry if you can hear my dog. There must be some delivery person coming to the door. I am obviously a bard type of person. I'm going to be the one that's joking. I'm always halfway to singing at any given moment. And anytime that I have been in a podcast with Rashawn or something and we've talked about the way we would handle something, I always have the biggest party atmosphere, talk about having fireworks and stuff would definitely be part of a lot of the events that we hypothetically design. So I just really feel seen by him, and the whole way that he just slips into this performance role and it's so distracting to everybody. I love it so much. I really want this, like, I want to be able to just spontaneously make fireworks go off, guys. It's like he hypnotizes them into seeing them, because we see them like firing their guns, and it looks like they are firing the fireworks into the sky themselves from their guns. But then the people who are on the outside, when we kind of pull back, aren't seeing any fireworks at all. So I don't know if it's supposed to be that he like hypnotizes them, or that the music like creates hallucinations. There's almost a sense of like he's drugged them, but I don't feel like there's any, we've seen people who have like gaseous powers and whatnot. There's no indication that's really what Brooke is doing. So I think it's just meant to be that the music like just kind of changes the way you see, which is wild, and I'd really like to explore a little bit more of that. So there's also this weird thing, you guys, that I keep forgetting about, where Zeo, despite getting beaten, keeps acting like he's won. And here he like makes this big speech, and then a bunch of these guys just do not like respond to it. And one of the men laments the fact that they didn't listen to Zeo's speech. And Zeo says something about how it's because he used his inside voice. It's such a strange trait to give to a side character. Like, I feel like this is actually a fun idea, but I'd like it if it were on one of our big bads even more, because it would be, I don't know, maybe that's just like, it's too much, because then we can't understand why these people would be following this guy. But it feels like it's a fun bit that gets a little bit wasted on a character who is sort of, it's funny, I feel like Zeo should be more of an active character, because he has a cool skill set, being able to blend in with everything. So it surprises me that he turns out to be as bit of a clueless goon as he is. Okay. This is when we have Sanji talking about how he is going to go in and protect the virtue of this lady, and that he can't, like, he has to be able to stop the tears in her eyes, or what kind of man is he? And we have, of course, her crying and like one of the teardrops landing on her boob. And I was just like, oh God. And he wraps it up, of course, with, once this battle's over, let's go have a drink at the Mermaid Cafe. So he flies through the air and lands foot first on somebody's head. All of the dudes around him, when he lands, stand stock still and don't even react. I think it's meant to be that he's like moving so quickly they don't have time, but it doesn't really look that way. It just looks like all of them are standing and waiting their turn. And then we have Zoro using his caliber Phoenix. I can't remember what caliber, though. I think he says 60. And he creates this like bonkers cyclone, which he does a little bit later as well. And all of these men that were standing there are just gone. I love that one guy says to Robin, "What are you looking at? Let's fight." Or, hear me out, my guy. Or, you can just start fighting her. You can just swing on her. Like, he's like waiting on the sidelines, like the ref is gonna give him a red card if he tries to, it's just such a weird moment of just like, come on, let's go. Well, there's like 15 of you standing right there. I really would have thought that you'd just, no? Okay. So yeah, she says something about how like there's so many invaluable artifacts here, and if you guys are able to fuck things up the way that you're operating right now with damaging everything around you, they are going to be destroyed. And then says, you should be ashamed of yourselves. So here she does the Trinity floors and has her hands come out of all of their backs and sides in the creepy... This is still, for me, one of the, like, spookiest powers. Later on, you guys... later on, Robin's power... I don't remember. Have we ever seen this before? Robin's power is growing a pair of legs up out of the ground, almost as if she's, like, laying on her back. And her legs are, you know what I'm saying? Like, her knees are bent and her feet are flat on the ground. But the tops of her thighs are, like, on the ground also. And she is just stomping on them with her huge bare feet, I might add. Which, that feels... I know that she can feel pain when she's, like, stabbed in one of those arms, right? I feel like we've established that in other episodes. So I just kept thinking about how she could try and use that ability, and, like, then she stomps on a guy, and it just feels, right, like stepping on a Lego. And she immediately has to stop, and it's just like, oh, guys, I'm so sorry. When it's in foot form, my feet are very sensitive, and I really can't, like, do the damage I want. Or if the enemy had a giant feather and tickled the bottom of her feet, and then it was just not, you know, she just couldn't stomp. Or maybe they tickle the bottom of the feet to try and stop her, and instead, like with me, it results in more destruction because she loses all control of herself and begins flailing to escape the feathers, and it just turns into a complete bloodbath. But anyway, what Robin's ability turned out to be was very funny to me. So then we have Brooke, and he's doing his little, like, hip thrust sort of dance. The pirates are going along with it, like, watching him and mirroring him as if they're in, like, a dance class or something. I love when he says everybody say woo, and they throw their hands in the air and they say woo. And then he does, like, a slice and says, Brooke says, "You've all been a lovely audience today." But even though there's that slice, we don't see them go down. I think it's meant to be that he cuts them with, like, a sword cane that's hidden, you know, but we just see them sort of stop in surprise, and him, like, smirking as much as a skull can smirk. And I really was confused because I was waiting for something to happen, and it doesn't really. Like, everybody else, when they take people out, we see them actually fall. And this is just sort of a weird cut to make so that we don't fully get the impact of it. So then we get the attack on Chopper, who is being, like, just lifted up by this guy. And I was just so horrified, y'all, about the fact that they could just pick up this adorable little stuffed guy. I'm thinking of it as a stuffed animal. And just, like, get in a circle to beat on him. What absolute monsters. You can attack all of my other friends, and I accept that. But you really decided to, like, go after Chopper in particular? You are weak. You are wusses. And it's pitiful. I am embarrassed for you. So anyway, Chopper turns into a version of himself that we have not seen before, where he's, like... I'm trying to think of how to describe the shape of him. Because before, he had, what was it? Like a total of 4 forms, right? So there's little baby Chopper. Then there's Chopper that's, like, on all fours and looks much more regular reindeer-like. Then there's the Chopper that's, like, stands up and has, like, the Dorito body, so he's really jacked looking and walks on 2 legs. And then there's the one that, like, when he takes too many rumble balls and he turns into a giant, unseeing sort of out of control elemental force of nature. And so now we're adding some others to the mix, and we find out that for all but one, he doesn't even need a rumble ball at all, which is very exciting. You guys know that, like, one of my sadder realizations was that because there was such a limited supply of the rumble balls, there was no way that Chopper was going to be allowed into battle very often, because that there has to be somebody left with the ship at all times, and it just was going to wind up being him. And I felt sad about it, because I really like Chopper, and when he fights, I feel very proud of him in this sort of proprietary way, like he's like my son. And I want him to be able to, like, show off. I want him to contribute to the group in a way that is more active and maybe even a little bit more macho, because he is often not taken seriously, and I would like for him to earn the respect of these other warriors. So anyway, this shape that he's in here, I want to call it like it's like a Vienna sausage. You know how, like, a Vienna sausage is really quite a thick sausage relative to its length, because they're just in those little cans, right? And he's like very stout and has a head that is a head and neck the same width of his body, basically. So he's able to knock all of these guys off him, and then he starts to, like, do a little kung fu pose, and we immediately leave, and I was like, oh, come on. So then we go to Usopp. He has one of these, like, what are they called? These Feed Me Seymour plants? Venus flytraps. And it comes down on one of the pirates, and I couldn't help but laugh, because, like, the abilities that he has are cool, like they are, but compared to how many people at once Zoro is able to take out, I was like, I don't really know if this is as good, because I know that probably the point is that Usopp Zoro is exceptional in this. So everybody else is they're never supposed to be as good as Zoro. But I guess I just feel kind of sad about it. Also, I have to touch back on something that I've talked about before, and that is the fact that, like, what Usopp fights with are all of these props and supplies, and it really, with my anxiety, I just keep being like, how many do you have left, though? Because you're just gonna, like, use them all up, and then you're gonna look up and the battle's gonna have gotten worse, and you're dependent on your stuff. You're not even, like, I don't know how much hand-to-hand he really can do. So, you know, I shouldn't speak before I know the details of this. But I felt like I wanted to see Zoro getting in there a little bit more. And instead, he's just firing a lot of these seeds out there. So we're seeing a ton of the Venus flytraps. But he's not really punching and kicking at all. And it just felt like, well, no offense, Usopp, but, like, do we really need you here? We could just take your stuff and then leave you here. And I don't really know how much difference that would make, and I don't like feeling that way. So anyway, somebody comes to sneak up behind Usopp, and it's Nami that uses her, like, electrocution, that, like, lightning strike from one of her weather rods. I know that you guys have told me what these are called, and I never remember. But yeah, she is able to take this guy down, and Usopp looks at him and says, and here I thought you had gotten stronger over the last 2 years. Guess I was wrong. And she truly has this, like, bummed out expression. She has this expression a few times in these episodes, and I could not help but laugh, because it's very clear that she is just not that impressed by anything that is happening. There's one point where she finally starts to be like, okay, actually, this is cool with what Frankie makes. But there was a moment where I was like, oh, that's kind of harsh, Nami. And then I stopped and thought about it, and I was like, she's not entirely feeling wrong. Like, Usopp looks more badass. He's put muscle on and everything, but it doesn't feel like he's doing anything. So there's a moment where we go back to the Sunny, and Frankie is in the middle of everything and just like saying essentially that 50,000 men is about right for what the crew is going to need for it to be an actual challenge. He says, I think this is like the perfect time to take them for a test drive. And it turns out he means the weapons of the Sunny, but I definitely thought he meant all of the Straw Hats. And I felt like, sure, that seems, I mean, evidently this isn't much of a challenge for them at all. But he offers to show Usopp and Chopper the new weapons that he's got hidden on board, and Nami just comes along because she doesn't want to be in the fight. She just straight up wants, as she puts it later, other people doing the work for her. And you guys, I kind of forget how shady Nami's whole attitude is in general. Like, I think of her as somebody who's willing to do anything for gold or berries or whatever. And I definitely see her as somebody who is like self-interested. But I don't remember, and I'm not saying like this has never happened. I'm saying I don't remember, so probably it has, and you guys can mention it to me what it is. But I don't remember there being a point where Nami was like, yeah, the fighting all of this is great, guys, but I'm just going to stay like below decks. I don't really feel like it. There's been a lot of times where it's sort of, I want you to like handle these guys because I want to go shopping. But it also felt a lot of the time like in those instances that she was with somebody who just did fight better than her. And I kind of understood. And here it's like she's gotten stronger. We see her using her, these weather rods, but it doesn't, like, even now when she has more ability, she is just like, nah, I'm good. So, we go over to the princess for a minute, and she is really amazed at what all of them are capable of. And Horty decides, like, all right, well, fight's not going my way, so let me just try and kill the princess straight up. And he sends a water shot at her, and this dumb bitch sees him, like, revving up, and then doesn't move. Can you, it would literally take you swaying to the side, not even at a full 40-degree angle. 20 degrees would probably do it. He's going for the center of mass. Can you, like, if we want to talk about characters who are lazy about fighting and doing nothing, the princess is useless. She is huge. She is the size of the Sunny. When we have the camera pull up, we get a very, very good view of her, because compared to all of the other people who are basically like single dots, she's enormous. So what we should be doing is her just flopping her tail around and stomping people down that way, in a similar way to how Robin is using her feet. But anyway, so Luffy, of course, stops the shot, and there's just her sort of putting a hand over her head and like cowering for a moment in a way that's absolutely, once again, useless. And, oh, I'm so sorry. It wasn't that Luffy stops. Luffy looks over, and he looks like he's about to jump in. I forgot this. But it's Jinbei who uses his own water shot, which is the same ability Horty is using. And he intercepts it. And when the next thing he says to Horty is, that raw power of yours is harnessed very poorly. Your fishman karate needs work. And I do enjoy, like, just telling anybody that they're just really not quite up to what you expected when you're in the middle of a fight. It's going to be clear that you're kind of trying to get a reaction out of them. And yet, with Jinbei, I don't feel like that's it at all. I think that he's just sort of taking the twofer of knowing that it's going to insult Horty. But as far as he's concerned, that's like his main takeaway is just like, you really should be better at this. I expected that you would be better than this. So what, like, how have you gotten as far as you have? Genuinely surprised that they put you in charge, you know? So yeah, this is when Jinbei has taken the attention of a lot of the other fishmen, and they all sort of discuss his bounty, and some of them are just like immediately like, he is a legend, and you know, now that he has turned traitor, we've got to focus on taking him down. And then there's some others that are like, wait, I've heard a lot of stories about this dude and he is badass and we do not stand a chance against him. And then Jinbei just yells at them all, are you guys going to fight or what? You're just standing there chattering to yourselves. And indeed, Horty then says, yeah, guys, there's nothing left for you to but to go forth and fight. And Horty, I just feel like you should know by now, with all of the fights you've been in and the things you've been through, that if your enemy seems to want something, you probably should do the opposite. So when your enemy is like, hey guys, come at me, all fight me at once, you shouldn't say, yeah guys, do it, go fight him all at once. But he is just so... he is incompetent. He is just really not good at this. There's a sort of what it is, I think, meant to be, is that he is just such a blunt instrument that he knows numbers are like his main advantage. So all he has to do is leverage the sheer number of people that they've got versus the Straw Hats and totally overwhelm them, and then their abilities are irrelevant because we have just, you know, managed to completely, like, tackle them. But because you've got moments where they're clearly, like, standing and taking turns to fight, that it doesn't feel like the numbers are being made use of very well. But anyway, these dudes all come forward and they start to, like, lift their swords against Jinbei, and then all of a sudden the swords have been sliced in half, the other halves flying off and just landing point first in the ground, and then we see Zoro is standing there and he just says to himself, this is boring. And then we go to a bunch of these other like these pirates. It's sort of interesting, guys, the way that this is set up, but the way that I'm thinking about this, and forgive me if you don't listen to the Song of Ice and Fire, the show that I do with Rashawn, but we're towards the ends of A Dance with Dragons right now. And there's a scene where Tyrion is in this camp, and there are all of these different, like, groups of fighters from different countries with different traditions in the ways that they fight. And they are described in these, like, terms that at the time reading it with Rashawn, I was like, these just sound like One Piece pirates. Like, they all just have their own really specific gimmick. And this feels like wherever Tyrion was, where they all get together. So even though we've got 100,000 men, they don't all fight the same way. And when we jump from one person to another, they will have a weapon that is like really perfect for the other person they are about to fight from the Straw Hats to disable. So, you know, these guys are all raising their swords, and Zoro is able to just slice them in half. And then all of a sudden here we've got more guys with swords, and they have these shields that look like tortoise shells, which are really, really cool. But they're called Iron Shell Squad. And I love Zoro. He just says, oh, like he is super unimpressed. And we get the flashback of him training at the castle and the things that he learned. And this is when he makes that like crazy cyclone that breaks their shields right in half. And I was just like, that feels like a real waste of awesome, like shell shields. Shell shields. That's a really hard thing to say, you guys. I just feel like, you know, like save those, take them away and like make a little fort, like go ahead and hide behind them. But anyway, so these dudes, like I said, are caught in this cyclone, and I love the fact that one of them is just saying, when does this stop? How long does this last? And another guy, I think Zoro says, until you go to hell or get to hell. And I was like, honestly, that is kind of awful. Like, being swept up into a cyclone while you're fighting is already like unwelcome. Clearly, we don't want to be in this situation. But I do have to say that being stuck in the cyclone, it's not even just that it tosses you somewhere that's very inconvenient, but that you just don't get put down again. I mean, it's such a combination of like being unable to escape things, but also like probably some severe nausea from spinning like that. Yeah, this feels like a really rough attack, you know. So then we have a bunch of fishmen who are like, all right, we've got our little air inner tubes, so we're going to come at you from the sky. And these dudes have mostly got spears, like tridents and things. And Sanji is looking up there, and again, it's a perfect attack for Sanji because he, it turns out, is now able to walk on air. I have to address, but only briefly, the flashback that he has to all of the horrible things he endured on the island. And it is just such a bummer, you guys. I can't wait for us to not talk about this anymore. I don't know if there's a point where that happens now, because we've gotten to this place in the story where so much of what our friends can do is due to their study. So it's likely that this is going to come up, but I just sort of want to get past this point and pretend that we're not using queer or trans or drag people as a punchline, and their mere presence is some sort of punishment. It's just such a bummer. So anyway, okay, yeah, this is when we've got like all of these porcupine guys. And it's so... okay, here they are. Sea Urchin Spike Unit and their leader, Harrison Boom, which is a really odd name. Harrison Bon, maybe that's how you say it. And they just say, okay, we're gonna stab you, we're gonna poke at you, so what are you gonna do now? And they come at Sanji, who is looking up at the sky, not even concerned about them at all, and he essentially levitates out of the spot he's standing, so that when all of these porcupine dudes come in to crush him, they just wind up crushing each other. And once he has ascended into the air, he is able to fight these fucking mermen who are in the sky. And I love that he says, let's cook these small fry. Oh, I love it. I wanted him to make a joke about like some kind of seafood based dish, you know. Small fry is pretty close because, you know, it brings fish and chips to mind, which I guess is like pretty solid. But yeah, I always am like, so this one is Poêle à frire spectre. I'm going to go look up what this is. Poêle à frire spectre. There we go. I'm trying to find, I have to be really careful to make sure that I'm not, getting spoiled, but nothing I'm seeing is a spoiler here, but I'm not getting just a translation. So maybe I just needed to add the word translation, unless somebody out there knows what it means, in which case tell me later. It looks like the Poêle à frire is a frying pan. I don't know if it's supposed to be, because his leg heats up. So I think it's meant to be basically like he's beating them with a frying pan. It's sort of odd because it looks like a regular kick, right? And he's just swinging his leg around. But then we see all of these fishmen getting hit, and we kind of pull back, and basically Sanji is tap dancing in place, and his attacks are, it's honestly really pretty. All of his attacks are hitting as these little rings of rainbow that are spreading around, and I think that's meant to be the power that he got from the island itself, because it has the rainbow and the big heart and everything. So I am sort of excited, y'all, that maybe Sanji's attacks are going to all be really cute and a little kawaii-ish, and I am very here for it. I'm all for, don't get me wrong, attacks that just look straight up badass, but you guys know how much of a slave to the aesthetic I can be, and if you think I would rather look like a complete badass than kick somebody and a heart-shaped puff of smoke pops out of my foot, I don't know who you think I am, but that sounds ideal. Never mind a heart-shaped rainbow puff of smoke. Oh my god, that sounds amazing. Anyway, okay, let me jump into the next episode here. I've talked about a lot of things out of order, so mostly it really doesn't matter. But yeah, the bit with Luffy laying out all of these guys, it seems like it's starting a couple episodes just to remind us, and I'm like, guys, that's the most memorable part. We don't need to be reminded of that. Okay, here we go. Oh my god, the cyclone. I love it. Jinbei is leading, heading into a whole group of fishmen, and he handles 12 of them in one shot. We see Sanji doing his breakdancing thing where his legs spin in the air. I really wonder how they're going to because we haven't seen a lot of our kickboxing live action actor, right? He is way more solid than he was in the practice sessions that made everybody super concerned. It was so frustrating. You guys, I think about this sometimes. We are in this place with media that we consume it in such a different way than we used to, where we get so much more information ahead of time, and we get a lot more say as the audience and stuff. If enough people bring up that your Sonic design is nightmare inducing, then you will change the Sonic design before the movie comes out, So this is the sort of thing that it's not the way things ever used to be handled. And to a degree, I don't think they should be, and it's part of why I wish that we didn't release so much info ahead of time, because so many people will formulate decisions about whether they're going to watch something on a 2-second behind the scenes or a little preview. And I sort of wondered, did did Netflix get upset at the actor because like the response to the behind the scenes of him kicking was so derisive that I couldn't help but think, are they glad that people are talking about it at least, and that's getting them attention? Or are they worried that him looking like such a weak fighter was going to make people not watch the show? And like, if they were displeased, did it get back to him that he looked so weak that they didn't want any more footage taken of him? Because I feel like that would just absolutely wreck me if I found that out. I'm sorry I'm so off topic here, you guys, but it's just like Sanjeev doing his breakdancer fight move is so fun to watch in the animation, and I don't know that we're going to be getting that on the show. Sanji also, like, doesn't take out nearly as many guys as Zoro, and so the two of them start doing the Gimli Legolas thing of just, like, barging into areas and trying to outdo each other with how many men they kill. And I love when Jinbei is, like, watching them sort of bemused, and this isn't a competition. And then Robin just says, don't worry about it. They're like this every time. So we have the moment with them all, like, just tearing through this crowd. One guy says, you've done enough damage, it's time to die. And both of them at the same time just say, shut up. And it's like the only time that they have ever been in sync with what they want, where they've had the same goal. So this guy that they shove lands in front of Horty, and Horty picks him up. This guy looks actually like he is bigger than Horty. I thought Horty was the biggest one. But no, he's picking this dude up, and the guy looks bigger than him. But yeah, the man says to Horty, they're too strong. And Horty says, what did you say to me? Are you seriously saying you as a fishman are afraid of these humans? Get out of my sight. And he just throws the guy, who lands like on his neck. And nobody dies in this show, but it really felt like that was meant to look like it would break his neck and it would kill him. Like, we were just meant to accept that, no, yeah, this guy died. Also, the fact that Horty is just, he's got this, like, kind of face when he looks displeased that makes me think of, like, in, like, a lot of movies, the aunt that smokes way too heavily and drinks way too much and never got married but has a string of lovers that she's left in her wake, and how she'll sit and look while she's waiting for some poor sap in the service industry to help her. That's the kind of expression that he has on his face throughout most of these fights. And I just was like, you need to give us something else here, bruh. So, okay, oh my god, you guys, I am so behind, I'm sorry. But this is when we have Frankie busting out with the I don't know what to call it. It's like a motorcycle that he's on, and it is really, really cool. There's no way to see this and not think of the motorcycle from, like, The Dark Knight. I think I remember reading that the stuntman, there was only one that could even drive that thing because it was, like, such a weird design and not very safe. And even the one who did manage to do it, like, broke a leg or something. Like, it was a pretty significant injury. So, yeah, this is what it is making me think of. And then we have the tank. And the tank, like, it's just Frankie on the motorcycle, but the tank is designed to look allegedly like a dinosaur. It very much was giving turtle to me. But maybe that's the joke, is that Luffy sees a dinosaur when it's actually much more turtle. I really, like, enjoy the fact that all of our friends can fit in there and it's this little tight space. It's just nice to have them working together inside of one of these things so that you get the dialogue of them. And it's Chopper who's, like, pointing out where to fire, and it's adorable Chopper just yelling fire and being super excited. So, all right, the end of this episode is when we have the Kraken show up, but as all of us could predict, Luffy's just like, hey, bud, what's up? You're not going to fight against us, right? And the Kraken is like, you're goddamn right, I'm not. And to summarize, we end up finding out that the Kraken is being blackmailed to fight for Horty because Horty knows where his brother lives. I don't remember what he says in response because Luffy asks him, is it like a, older brother or younger? And I don't remember what he says. But he starts to squeeze the princess to death once Horty reminds him of the leverage he has over him. And then eventually Luffy just chimes in and is like, hey, bud, if you need somebody to save your brother, we'll definitely do that. Of course we will. We're friends. And the Kraken gets so emotional and then immediately lets go of the princess, and it's super cute. You guys, I am low-key hoping that this Kraken could just be a bud that is around forever. Can he, become a member of the Straw Hats? Because I wouldn't mind it. I think that'd be pretty fun. It's actually surprising to me when I stop and think about it, with a show like this and the crew like this, that we haven't got just an animal companion. I think the ship is meant to sort of take the place of that. But yeah, I really wouldn't mind if we got this permanent sidekick that's in the water with them all the time. So anyway, the tank and stuff, they wind up getting sort of outsmarted, I guess is the word I want, because there's a huge trench that is blown into place by the one dude who's a sort of underwater mole. I don't know what to call him. He's digging into the dirt and popping out that's what is it? Whack-a-mole. Yeah. It's like whack-a-mole, right? So he manages to sort of lay a trap there. Even though these are really cool machines, they have got their, need for a well-paved and level playing field. I also want to mention that this little whack-a-mole guy has a front half that is a complete shit show and then just regular human legs. And something about that is incredibly creepy to me. Desperately creepy. So then we see somebody circling him underground, and he's like, what the hell is going on? And I thought this might be Brook. You see him only briefly, this silhouette, and I thought maybe Brook's got his mouth open, and since he's all bone, he can do this. And it turns out it's actually Chopper in one of his other forms, and he has these huge antlers that are instead of being the individual prong, they're still prongs, but they come forward into almost like a giant ski sort of shape. And it turns out that these horns can just dig through the ground, which doesn't look like those should help with that at all, actually. But Luffy calls him a big hairy bug, and that is really what he looks like. I wasn't really putting it together what he's, the silhouette and what it was giving, but once he said bug, I was like, oh, definitely, that's those pincers that beetles have. So let's see. I feel like the moment with right. So the moment with our Kraken friend and Luffy just being obviously we'll save your brother, that's almost at the end of the last episode. But right before that, we have him walking, and the other henchman, the guy with 8 arms, they're all clashing in the middle we're seeing Sanji and Zoro jump up and push them out of the way. It's actually really cool. I liked the way that this was animated. And one of them comes at Luffy, and he is just in the air, and he's on gear 3. I don't even know, but he says, that's enough. I'm done with you. And he stomps somebody else into the ground. And all of the people on the sidelines are cheering. And then some huge shadow emerges and all of the people around are looking completely shocked. And this shadow is like roughly the size of the whole town. This is like the scale was difficult for my mind to comprehend. And this is this like legendary ship that I think got mentioned in the last 3 episodes, but I completely forgot about it. And the ship is called Noah, which I do find very funny. The Ship of Promise. And that's all we get. And then the episode ends. So I'm over time. I do have to back off, but let's see. Oh, sorry. Florian said, "I love that Sanji can do that now. We saw his we saw CP9 use this walk on air move, and it fits him well. It really does." But yeah, I'm over time. So thank you all again so much for listening. Thank you, Florian, for hanging out with me, and let me know what y'all think. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.